The air in the grand hall, thick with the scent of lilies and shattered dreams, seemed to press down on Lily. One moment, her heart soared towards a lifetime with James. The next, his words, "I can't do this," were a hammer blow, echoing in the stunned silence. From the front pew, his mother, Patricia Penworth, offered a venomous, triumphant smirk. Humiliation, hot and sharp, washed over Lily as whispers sliced through the air. But from the shadows at the back, her older brother, Mark, watched. His fists, calloused from hard work and harder times, clenched. He'd only been free a year, fighting for a straight path, but seeing his sister so publicly broken ignited protective fire. He wouldn't resort to the old ways. No. His vow, silent and fierce, was for a different kind of reckoning, one that wouldn't just punish her tormentors, but would help Lily rise from these ashes, so radiant and strong they'd be blinded by her light. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about resurrection. Lily had always been the gentle heart of their small family, a believer in the good of people, a trait Mark, shaped by a harsher world, both cherished and feared for. She had poured every ounce of her hopeful spirit into this wedding, imagining a future painted in the bright colors James had promised. Her choices were simple, heartfelt. Wildflowers, her grandmother's lace, a local baker. Each detail, however, had drawn quiet, condescending critiques from Patricia Penworth, slights Lily had dismissed, attributing them to a future mother-in-law's nerves, eager to smooth any ripple in her perfect love story. James, with his easy charm and successful career at his father's firm, had seemed like a fairy tale prince. Lily, captivated by his grand pronouncements and dazzling smile, had never noticed the subtle ways he diminished her, the almost imperceptible tightening of control. Mark, in stark contrast, knew the world's shadows intimately. His youth had been marked by significant mistakes, choices that led to long years behind bars, contemplating every misstep. Prison hadn't broken him. It forged him anew, stripping away recklessness and replacing it with a quiet, observant resolve. Upon his release, his sole focus was building an honest life, striving to be the brother Lily, with her unwavering and often undeserved faith in him, deserved. He worked a physically demanding job at a sprawling warehouse, kept his head down, and found solace in the simple normalcy of dinners at Lily's cozy apartment. He'd been suspicious of James from their first meeting, detecting an emptiness beneath the polished surface, a patronizing tone James sometimes used with Lily, as if she were a delightful but slightly dim pet. Patricia Penworth's assessing gaze, devoid of warmth, filled him with unease. He'd tried gently to voice his concerns, but Lily, adrift in the intoxicating sea of love, had brushed him aside. Mark, she'd said, was just being overprotective, his past making him cynical. He'd retreated, unwilling to dim her happiness, a decision that now gnawed at him with bitter regret. He understood the Penworths. Their currency was status and wealth, and Lily, with her earnest heart and modest beginnings, was a curiosity they tolerated, but clearly never truly embraced. The wedding was meant to be her happy ending. Instead, it had become a public spectacle of her deepest vulnerability. The ceremony itself had started like a scene from a dream. Golden light filtered through magnificent stained glass windows, painting the pews in jewel tones. The delicate fragrance of lilies and roses, Lily's favorites, hung in the air. She had floated down the aisle on their father's arm, her smile radiant, her eyes fixed on James. Even Mark, positioned discreetly at the rear of the church, had felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps Lily had truly found her happiness. Perhaps James was not the callow man Mark suspected. Then it was time for the vows. James cleared his throat, his handsome features suddenly unreadable. He glanced not at Lily, but towards his mother, who gave a minute, almost invisible nod. That was when he spoke, his voice devoid of the love he professed for months. "Lily, I've realized I can't do this. We can't do this. This was a mistake. A shocked gasp swept through the congregation. Lily's radiant smile froze, then shattered. Her hand, which had been reaching for his, dropped lifeless. "James, what were you saying?" she whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the sudden, oppressive silence. "It's for the best, Lily," James stated, his tone flat, as if he were closing a business deal. "We're just too different. My family, they feel—" He gestured vaguely toward his parents. Patricia Penworth then rose, her voice slicing to the stunned quiet, each word a deliberate cut. "What my son is attempting to articulate, dear, is that this union is simply unsuitable. We endeavor to be polite naturally, but it's abundantly clear you're not. Penworth material." Her husband, a stout man whose face seemed permanently set in a scowl, nodded his curt agreement, his eyes like chips of ice. A wave of raw, burning humiliation engulfed Lily, stealing her breath. Tears streamed unheeded down her face, blurring her vision, ruining the makeup she'd so carefully applied. The guests stared, a mixture of shock and morbid fascination on their faces. The beautiful church, a sanctuary of love and hope just moments before, transformed into a cruel stage for her public disgrace. Mark felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. The iron control he cultivated over years threatened to snap. Every fiber of his being screamed to charge down that aisle, to erase the smug superiority from Patricia Penworth's face, to make James experience even a shadow of the agony he'd inflicted. But then his gaze fell on Lily's slumped shoulders, the utter devastation in her eyes. Violence would only amplify the spectacle, deepen her shame, and undoubtedly send Mark back to the place he fought so desperately to leave behind. No, his response had to be more intelligent, more enduring. He moved then, not with aggression, but with a swift, protective urgency. He reached Lily's side in a few long, determined strides, oblivious to the stunned murmurs and averted gazes. He gently took her arm, his touch surprisingly firm and steady. "Come on, Lils," he murmured, his voice low and resonant, a lifeline in the swirling vortex of her despair. "Let's get you out of here." He offered no glance to James, no acknowledgement of the Penworths. His entire focus was on his sister. He wrapped a strong arm around her trembling shoulders, attempting to shield her from the curious, pitying eyes, and guided her down the side aisle, away from the smoldering ruins of her wedding day. The heavy oak doors of the church thudded shut behind them, a sound of grim finality, muffling the echoes of Patricia Penworth's cruel pronouncement, but not its sting. Outside, in the comparative peace of the churchyard, Lily's composure finally crumbled. She sagged against him, her body convulsing with wrenching sobs. Mark held her tightly, allowed her to grieve, his own heart not of fury and profound sorrow. The desire for retribution was a bitter, metallic taste in his mouth. He could almost feel the satisfaction of James's fear of Patricia's downfall. It would be so easy to slip back into the old patterns, to leverage the skills and contacts from his former life. But then he looked at Lily's tear-ravaged face, her spirit so grievously injured. What would that kind of revenge truly accomplish? A fleeting, dark satisfaction for him, perhaps, but it wouldn't mend Lily's broken heart. It wouldn't restore her dignity or her shattered self-worth. It might even terrify her, creating a chasm between them. "They'll pay, Lily," he heard himself say, the words raw and uncompromising. "I promise you they will pay for this." Lily shook her head, her voice muffled against his chest. "No, Mark, please, don't do anything reckless. It'll just make everything worse." Her plea, born of fear for him even in the depths of her own agony, resonated deep within him. She was right. His old methods, the ones he knew so well, would only breed more pain, more complications. He had to find another way, a better way. This wouldn't be about swift, brutal payback. It would be a slow, meticulous, and ultimately constructive path. He would help Lily rebuild her life, piece by painstaking piece, until she was stronger, happier, and more fulfilled than she could ever have imagined being with someone like James Penworth. That would be his revenge. Her flourishing, her radiant happiness would be their ultimate, undeniable punishment. In the bleak days that followed, Mark became Lily's steadfast guardian, her silent protector. He moved into her small spare bedroom, his presence a quiet comfort in the lonely apartment that was once filled with the cheerful hum of wedding plans and joyful anticipation. He listened with unwavering patience as she relived the humiliation, her words interspersed with tears of anger, confusion, and profound shame. He brewed endless cups of tea, ensuring she ate something, anything, even when she insisted she had no appetite. He fielded her calls, deflecting the sympathetic but intrusive inquiries from friends and the morbid curiosity of acquaintances. He was her anchor in a stormy sea, solid and unyielding. Gradually, he began to gently coax her from the suffocating darkness. He remembered her passion for baking, the way her face would illuminate when she spoke of experimenting with new recipes, the joy she found in creation. The kitchen, once the heart of her wedding cake trials and joyful planning, now stood as a monument to her pain. One afternoon, he returned from the market with bags laden with flour, sugar, rich Belgian chocolate, and exotic spices. "Thought you might feel like, he said, his tone deliberately casual, avoiding her gaze as he placed them on the counter. Lily stared at the familiar ingredients, then at Mark, a flicker of something other than raw grief in her eyes. I don't know, Mark. I don't think I can. Just for us," he urged gently. "No pressure. Maybe just some of those chocolate chip cookies I like." To his immense relief and quiet surprise, a few hours later, the warm, comforting aroma of chocolate chip cookies, her signature recipe, began to permeate the apartment. It was a small, tentative step, but a step nonetheless. He praised them extravagantly, even though a few were slightly burnt around the edges. And he saw it. The faintest ghost of a smile touched Lily's lips. This, he knew, was a true beginning, not a campaign of intimidation, but a quiet, unwavering campaign of healing and empowerment. He would use his street smarts, his ability to read people and situations, not to threaten, but to investigate. He needed to understand the full scope of the Penworth's machinations, not for direct retaliation, but to ensure Lily was insulated from any further manipulation, and to subtly arm himself with knowledge. He knew people, individuals from all walks of life, and information he had learned always had a way of finding its way to those who knew where to listen. The apartment, once a symphony of Lily's bright laughter and the happy chaos of wedding preparations, now echoed with heavy silence, punctuated only by Lily's muffled, intermittent sobs. She drifted through the days in her pajamas, her gaze fixed on the television screen, its flickering images a stark, unwelcome contrast to the monochrome landscape of her inner world. Mark observed her, his heart aching with a helplessness he despised. He knew grief demanded its time, but he also knew the core of Lily's spirit, though deeply wounded, was inherently resilient. He just needed to help her unearth it again. He began by subtly reintroducing her to her small, forgotten passions. "Remember those incredible lemon lavender cupcakes you created for Mrs. Henderson's 70th? He'd remark casually, as if the thought had just struck him. "She still raves about them, Or, "That charcoal sketch you started of the ancient willow down by the river. You really should finish it, Lils. It had something special." Lily would usually offer only a slight shake of her head, or a wan, fleeting smile. But Mark persisted, not with overt pressure, but with a gentle, unwavering encouragement. He initiated a project jar, a simple glass container where he asked Lily to deposit a slip of paper each day, noting one small thing she might consider doing or creating. Some days, The slip remained starkly blank. On others, it held a single, hesitant word: walk, or read, or eventually bake. And Mark would be there, ready to facilitate, walking beside her in companionable silence as she wished, or returning from the library with a carefully chosen book. He also began to discreetly utilize his network, not the shadowy connections that led to whispered threats in dark alleys, but the kind that understood the city's pulse, who held influence, who knew the unspoken truths. He learned, without much surprise, that James had been intimately involved with another woman, the daughter of a shipping tycoon, no less, for several weeks, even months, leading up to the wedding. The Penworths, it became clear, had meticulously orchestrated the public humiliation to sever ties with Lily decisively and brutally, ensuring no messy emotional entanglements or, more critically to their way of thinking, potential financial claims. Their aim was to elevate their son's social and financial standing. The sheer, calculated callousness of their actions solidified Mark's resolve, but he channeled his mounting anger into strategic productivity. He discovered details about a small, upscale community market scheduled in a few weeks. They have a section for artisan home bakers, he mentioned, with studied nonchalance, leaving a colorful flyer on the kitchen counter. Just putting it out there. Lily initially recoiled from the idea. Who would possibly want my baking now, Mark? I'm a joke, a failure. You are not a failure, Lily, Mark stated, his voice firm yet gentle, a tone that brooked no argument. You are a survivor, and your baking, it's extraordinary. Let people taste it. What do you honestly have to lose? Hesitantly, persuaded by his unshakable conviction, Lily agreed. The prospect of facing people, of being judged anew, filled her with a profound dread, but a tiny, nascent spark of defiance, carefully fanned by Mark's unwavering belief in her talent, began to glow within her. Together, they spent evenings in the kitchen, Lily tentatively experimenting with new flavor combinations and refining old favorites, Mark serving as chief taster, surprisingly adept pot washer, and enthusiastic encourager. He even helped her design simple yet elegant packaging for her cookies, cupcakes, and miniature tarts, his keen eye for detail, honed in less reputable ventures, proving remarkably useful for branding. On the morning of the market, Lily was a bundle of raw nerves. Mark drove her, his calm presence a counterpoint to her anxiety, helped her arrange her small, inviting stall, and then stepped back, a silent, reassuring sentinel. The Penworths, he knew, occasionally graced this particular market with their presence. A small, cold part of him hoped they would see Lily, not as the broken, weeping figure they left at the altar, but as a woman standing tall, proudly sharing her gift with the world. It would be a subtle, satisfying twist of the knife he was carefully sharpening. Slowly, then with increasing frequency, people began to pause at Lily's stall. They were drawn in by the irresistible aroma of fresh baking, the artful presentation of her goods. Lily, initially shy and hesitant, found herself gradually relaxing, talking animatedly about her passion, her carefully sourced ingredients, her love for the craft. And as she sold her first cupcake, then her second, then an entire beautifully wrapped box of assorted cookies, a genuine smile, the first truly radiant smile Mark had seen in what felt like an eternity, illuminated her face. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Mark watched, his chest swelling with a fierce, protective pride. This was it. This was the revenge he had envisioned. Lily, rising phoenix like from the ashes of her humiliation, stronger, more vibrant, and more resilient than before. And as for the Penworths, their cruel judgment, their calculated disdain, would, he felt with growing certainty, eventually become the architect of their own undoing. The universe had a peculiar way of balancing its accounts, especially when nudged by a little bit of truth and a whole lot of courage. Lily's charming little baking stall at the community market rapidly became a cherished weekly destination. With each passing market day, her confidence visibly blossomed, mirroring the growth of her loyal customer base. People weren't just captivated by her exquisitely flavored cakes and perfectly textured cookies. They were increasingly drawn to her quiet warmth, her gentle smile that, while still occasionally shadowed by remembered sadness, now held a newfound, steely resilience. Mark remained her silent partner, her indispensable logistics manager, her most ardent cheerleader. He'd rise with her before the sun on market days, his powerful frame easily handling the heavy boxes, his steady presence a constant source of reassurance. He even leveraged his old network in new ways to secure her premium ingredients at favorable prices, his street-hall negotiation skills proving surprisingly effective in the competitive world of artisanal baking. Their bond, always a bedrock of their lives, deepened, evolving into something richer and more nuanced. Lily began to see past the stark label of ex-con that society, and sometimes Mark himself, had branded him with. She saw his unwavering loyalty, his quiet, formidable strength, his unshakable belief in her even when her own had crumbled to dust. She recognized the profound sacrifices he was making. The exhausting late nights at the warehouse, often followed by pre-dawn mornings helping her, never were a complaint escaping his lips. Mark, she ventured one evening, as they were carefully packing up the few unsold cookies, the scent of vanilla and cinnamon still clinging to the air. Why are you doing all of this to me? You have your own life, your own demanding job. Mark shrugged, his gaze fixed on a distant point, a characteristic habit when he was feeling introspective. You're my sister, Lils. That's the only why I need. But he knew, in the quiet recesses of his heart, that it was more complex than that. Helping Lily heal was, in a profound way, healing him too. It provided him with a clear, constructive purpose, a positive channel for his fiercely protective instincts, allowing him to build rather than destroy. It was a form underscore of atonement, not just for his past transgressions, but for the agonizing helplessness he'd felt, unable to shield her from the Penworth's initial devastating cruelty. The insidious whispers about the disastrous wedding hadn't entirely vanished from the town's gossip mill. In fact, they had undergone a fascinating transformation. People had witnessed Lily's quiet dignity, her burgeoning success at the market. They had also begun to hear counter-rumors, subtly amplified by Mark's discreet dissemination of the unvarnished truth through a surprisingly far-reaching network of acquaintances. Stories about the Penworth's cold-blooded calculation, about James's concurrent affair with a wealthier heiress. The public narrative was undeniably shifting. Lily was no longer simply the pitiable jilted bride. She was emerging as the wrong woman, courageously and gracefully rebuilding her life. The Penworths, once revered as pillars of the community, were starting to be viewed with distinct coolness, their characteristic arrogance suddenly appearing less like confident authority and more like distasteful hubris. One sun-drenched afternoon, Patricia Penworth herself made an appearance at the bustling market. She swept through the aisles with her customary air of regal disdain, her nose slightly elevated, her gaze dismissive of the local artisans. She paused, as if by accident, near Lily's stall, her eyes widening first in surprise, then narrow with familiar condescension as she took in the artful display of baked goods and a small, appreciative crowd of customers. Lily froze, her heart instantly hammering against her ribs. Mark, who had been discreetly observing the market dynamics from a nearby coffee stand, his senses always alert, tensed, every muscle coiled, ready to intervene if Patricia dared to cause a scene. Patricia sniffed audibly. Well, Lily, I see you managed to find a little hobby to occupy your time. Her tone was a carefully calibrated blend of condescension and dismissal. Before Lily could formulate a response, a distinguished older woman, Mrs. Albright, a devoted regular at Lily's stall and a respected figure in the community, stepped forward with quiet authority. "It's considerably more than a mere hobby, Patricia," Mrs. Albright stated, her voice firm and clear, cutting through the ambient market noise. "Lily is a remarkably talented artisan. Her cakes, I assure you, are the finest in the city, far superior, in fact, to that overpriced, rather tasteless confection you served at your last charity gala." Patricia Penworth's carefully composed face flushed a blotchy, unbecoming red. Several other customers, emboldened by Mrs. Albright's defense, murmured their audible agreement. Utterly humiliated, the table so unexpectedly turned. Patricia spun on her heel and stalked away, to encounter a stark, public departure from the triumphant dismissal she had likely envisioned. Lily caught Mark's eye across the bustling thoroughfare. A small, almost shy, yet undeniably triumphant smile touched her lips. He gave her a slow, deeply approving nod. The scales of justice were tipping, not through overt aggression or confrontation, but through the quiet, undeniable power of community solidarity and Lily's own burgeoning, irrefutable talent. Mark felt profound, almost visceral satisfaction. His unique brand of revenge was unfolding with exquisite precision, not as a destructive tempest, but as a rising tide of goodwill and support, lifting Lily ever higher while the Penworths began to slowly, but surely, sink under the oppressive weight of their own snobbery and malice. He also knew, with a grim certainty born of experience, that the Penworths wouldn't absorb this public slight gracefully. Their pride was a monstrous, easily wounded beast. He needed to remain vigilant. The brief, charged encounter with Patricia Penworth at the market was merely a precursor, a faint tremor before the inevitable earthquake. Lily's small baking enterprise, now officially christened Lily's Layers of Love, began to attract attention far beyond the local community. A prominent food blogger, captivated not only by her exquisite confections, but also by the quiet resilience of her story, penned a glowing, heartfelt review that, to Lily's astonishment, went viral. Suddenly, Lily found herself fielding a deluge of calls, from trendy cafes eager to stock her cakes, from high-end event planners inquiring about her availability for catering, and even from a local television station interested in featuring her in a morning show segment highlighting inspiring local entrepreneurs. It was an exhilarating, overwhelming, and frankly, terrifying whirlwind all at once. Mark, ever the pragmatist, the calm eye in her personal storm, helped her navigate the sudden, intense influx of attention. He meticulously reviewed contracts with shrewdness that belied his lack of formal business training, negotiated favorable terms with suppliers, and helped her strategize how to scale her production to meet the burgeoning demand without compromising the artisanal quality that was her hallmark. He even managed to persuade a few of his warehouse colleagues, burly, rough-around-the-edges men with surprisingly gentle hands and an unexpected appreciation for precision, to help with deliveries and the heavy lifting of bulk ingredients on their days off, ensuring they were fairly compensated from Lily's rapidly growing profits. These men, in turn, developed a fierce, almost paternal protectiveness towards Miss Lily. The Penworths, however, were not content to merely fade into the background of Lily's success. Incensed by her growing acclaim and concurrent noticeable erosion of their own carefully cultivated social standing, they decided to retaliate. An insidious series of anonymous, scathing online reviews began to materialize, viciously attacking Lily's character, baselessly questioning her hygiene standards, and insidiously insinuating that her tragic backstory was a calculated, manipulative ploy for public sympathy and financial gain. Vicious, unfounded rumors started to circulate with alarming speed, their origins easily traceable by anyone with a mind to look back to sources closely affiliated with the Penworth family. Lily was devastated, the attacks reopening old wounds. "Why are they doing this, Mark?" she cried one evening, her phone clutched in her trembling hand, her face pale with distress and disbelief. "Isn't it enough that they shattered my wedding, my dreams? Why can't they just leave me in peace?" Mark's jaw tightened, a muscle flexing ominously. This was the escalation he had anticipated, the desperate lashing out of wounded pride. "Because people like them, Lils," he said, his voice dangerously calm, a low rumble controlled fury, "cannot stand to see someone they try to crush, not just survive, but thrive. Your strength, your success, it threatens them." This time, Mark knew that subtle counter-narratives and quiet support wouldn't suffice. He had to act more decisively, yet still operate within the strict confines of the law, and most importantly, in a manner that wouldn't tarnish Lily's hard-won, pristine image. He reactivated his old investigative skills, honed in a world where information was power and survival often depended on knowing more than the next person, to meticulously trace the digital footprints of the most damaging online attacks. It wasn't particularly challenging. The Penworths, in their towering arrogance, had been surprisingly careless, leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs. He methodically gathered irrefutable proof. IP addresses that led uncomfortably close to their known associates, veiled threats embedded in emails that had been carelessly forwarded, boasts of their campaign overheard, and relayed by disgruntled former employees eager to see their comeuppance. He didn't plan a direct, dramatic confrontation. Not yet. His reveal needed to be more impactful, more public, yet executed with finesse that would leave Lily entirely untouched by the ensuing fallout. The upcoming annual Regional Food Festival, a prestigious event to which Lily had, to her delight, received an invitation to participate, seemed like the perfect stage. The Penworths, predictably, were major sponsors of the festival, their family name prominently emblazoned on banners and promotional materials. They would undoubtedly be there, preening in the spotlight they so avidly courted. As Lily poured all her creative energy and focus into preparing for the festival, designing her most ambitious and beautiful display of confections yet, Mark worked quietly and diligently in the background. He consulted a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer, a woman whose formidable reputation he knew well, who owed him a significant favor from years past, someone who understood the intricate dance of defamation law and reputation management. The reveal wasn't to be a theatrical denunciation delivered by Mark. Instead, it was a quiet, irrefutable weight of evidence detailing the Penworth systematic campaign of slander, anonymously and strategically delivered in carefully prepared packages to the festival organizers and a select few influential media contacts, just hours before the event was due to commence. Each package contained meticulously organized printouts, damning screenshots, and a concise, lawyer-vetted summary, all pointing unequivocally to a deliberate, malicious attempt to sabotage a small, local business out of spite. It also contained a delicately worded, almost imperceptible suggestion that if the Penworth sponsorship continued to be so prominently celebrated, this rather unsavory information might, regrettably, find its way to a much wider and less forgiving audience. At the festival, Lily's stall was a vibrant oasis of warmth, color, and mouth-watering aromas. She was visibly nervous, but her underlying radiance shone through. Then Mark, observing from a discreet distance, watched as one of the main festival organizers, a formidable woman known for her unwavering integrity, approached Mr. Penworth Sr. with conspicuously grim expression. Their hushed, evidently tense conversation was visible from across the manicured festival lawn. Mr. Penworth's normally ruddy complexion progressively paled to a sickly gray. Patricia, standing rigidly beside him, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning alarm. A short while later, a popular local news anchor, one of the media contacts Mark had anonymously and astutely included in his information drop, approached Lily for what appeared to be an impromptu interview. She didn't broach the subject of the Penworths directly, but with consummate skill, she guided the conversation towards Lily's inspiring journey, her admirable resilience, and the often unseen challenges faced by small businesses, pointedly mentioning unscrupulous competitors or those who might unfortunately seek to tear others down out of envy. Lily, entirely unaware of Mark's intricate behind-the-scenes maneuvering, spoke eloquently and from the heart about her passion for baking and her profound gratitude for the overwhelming support she had received from the community. The true, impactful reveal, however, unfolded later that evening, during the festival's much-anticipated award ceremony. The Penworths, who usually occupy prime seats in the front row, basking in reflected glory, were conspicuously, tellingly absent, and when the award for Most Promising New Artisan of the Year was announced, the name that echoed to the excited hush was Lily's. The applause that erupted was thunderous, heartfelt, and undeniably genuine. As Lily, stunned and overcome, walked onto the small stage, her eyes shining with unshed tears of pure joy, Mark stood at the back of the assembled crowd, a quiet, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. His revenge, the one he had so carefully orchestrated, was complete. Lily was not just surviving. She was soaring, bathed in the warm glow of public admiration. And the Penworths? Their desperate, malicious attempt to destroy her had only served to expose their own inherent ugliness, leading to their quiet, deeply humiliating retreat from the very limelight they so desperately craved. The truth, delivered with precision and strategic patience, had proven to be a far more potent weapon than any fist or shouted threat. Lily stood on the small, brightly lit stage, her fingers clutching the cool, smooth surface of the Most Promising New Artisan Award, her heart a vibrant drum against her ribs, overflowing with a cascade of emotions. The applause in the crowd was a tangible wave of warmth, washing over her, cleansing the last lingering traces of the shame and humiliation that had once threatened to drown her. She looked out the sea of smiling faces, friends, loyal customers, fellow artisans, and even kind strangers, all sharing her moment, all celebrating her hard-won success. Her eyes instinctively found Mark, standing near the edge of the gathered crowd, his expression an unreadable, potent mixture of intense pride and fierce, protective tenderness. In that singular, crystallizing moment, she understood the depth of his love, the quiet complexity of his actions. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling slightly, not with fear this time, but with the sheer, overwhelming force of her emotions. "Thank you all so very much. This award, this moment, it means more to me than words can ever truly express." She spoke with genuine passion about her lifelong love for baking, of the profound joy it brought her to share her creations, to bring a little sweetness into people's lives. And then, her voice gaining a newfound strength and clarity, she said, "I also want to extend my deepest, most heartfelt thanks to my brother, Mark." A ripple of interest went through the crowd. All eyes turned towards him. Mark, unaccustomed to such direct public attention, shifted uncomfortably but met her gaze, his own eyes betraying a depth of emotion he rarely showed. "Many of you know or perhaps heard that I went through a particularly difficult and painful time recently," Lily continued, her voice clear and steady, holding no trace of self-pity. "And when I felt like I had absolutely nothing left, when I felt completely and utterly broken, my brother was there. He believed in me when I couldn't even begin to believe in myself. He picked me up, dusted me off, and patiently, steadfastly, showed me that even from the deepest, most agonizing pain, something truly beautiful and strong can grow. He taught me about real strength, about the quiet power of resilience, about never giving up. This award, it's as much as it is mine. Mark, you didn't just help me rebuild my business. You helped me rebuild my life. You once said you'd get revenge for what happened, and I think this right here is the very best kind of revenge. Me, standing here happy, whole, and surrounded by such incredible kindness. Them, well, they've simply become irrelevant. A fresh, even more enthusiastic wave of applause, louder and more sustained this time, filled the large tent. Tears streamed freely down Lily's face. But these were tears of gratitude, a profound relief of undeniable triumph. Mark felt a familiar lump form in his throat, an emotion so powerful it almost choked him. He simply nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright, a silent acknowledgment of her words, of their shared journey. He had craved justice for Lily, a balancing of the scales, and in this unexpected, uplifting way, he had achieved it. The Penworth's carefully constructed social standing had taken a significant, perhaps irreparable, blow. Whispers of their malicious, underhanded campaign against Lily had spread like wildfire through their elite social circles, and the sudden, unexplained withdrawal of their very public festival sponsorship spoke volumes, without a single word being uttered. They were facing a quiet, insidious shunning, a social death that, for people of their ilk, was a fate far worse than any overt confrontation or financial penalty. Later that evening, after the crowds had finally dispersed and they were carefully packing up the remnants of Lily's successful stall, she turned to him, her eyes still shining, and threw her arms around him in a tight, heartfelt embrace. "Thank you, Mark," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion against his shoulder. "Thank you for absolutely everything. You're the best brother anyone in the world could ever ask for." "You did all the hard work, Lils," he said, his voice characteristically gruff, though softened by the depth of his own feelings. "You're the strong one here. Always were." "We did it together," she insisted, pulling back slightly to look him directly in the eyes, her gaze unwavering. "You showed me what true loyalty, true strength, and unconditional love really look like. You know, for such a long time, I was so scared of your past, of what it meant. But now I see that your past, everything you went through, it forged you into the man you are today. It made you strong and incredibly smart and fiercely, wonderfully protective. And you used all of that, every bit of it, to help me." Mark felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, a quiet contentment he hadn't experienced in too many years. The raw anger, the corrosive bitterness, the initial primal desire for a harsher, more destructive form of retribution had all faded, replaced by a deep, resonant satisfaction. He had protected his sister. He had helped her rediscover her joy, her purpose. And in doing so, he had inadvertently found a significant measure of redemption for himself. He was no longer just Mark, the ex-con, a label that followed him like a shadow. He was Mark, Lily's brother, her business partner, her unwavering protector. And that was a title he wore with immense, quiet pride. The best revenge, he now understood with absolute clarity, wasn't about tearing someone else down. It was about building someone you loved and in the process, rebuilding yourself. It was about consciously, deliberately choosing light over darkness, hope over despair, creation over destruction. In the months that followed, Lily's layers of love continued its sweet ascent, blossoming into a beloved local institution. She moved out of her cramped apartment and into a charming, sun-drenched cottage on the outskirts of town, complete with a spacious, airy kitchen, a significant portion of which she expertly converted into a fully licensed commercial baking space. She hired a small, dedicated staff, including, to everyone's surprise, a few of Mark's former warehouse buddies who discovered surprising, latent aptitude for the delicate arts of kneading dough and meticulously decorating cakes. Lily herself became a minor local celebrity, her inspiring story of resilience, entrepreneurial spirit, and quiet triumph inspiring many in the community. She even began offering intimate workshops for aspiring bakers, generously sharing her hard-won knowledge, her passion, and her belief in the transformative power of pursuing one's dreams. James Penworth and his family gradually, almost imperceptibly, faded from Lily's life and from the local social scene, their names surfacing only occasionally in hushed gossip columns detailing their declining social fortunes or ill-advised business ventures. Lily felt no particular triumph in their downfall, only a quiet, serene sense of detachment. They were, as she had so eloquently stated at the festival, simply irrelevant to her happiness, shadows from a past she had outgrown. She eventually met someone new, a kind, thoughtful architect with a gentle smile, an easy laugh, and a genuine appreciation for both her inner strength and her legendary lemon drizzle cake. He loved her for exactly who she was, flaws and triumphs alike, not for some idealized version he wished her to be. Mark, too, found a new, fulfilling path. Inspired by his unexpected success in helping Lily launch and navigate her business, he started a small, specialized logistics and support service for other fledgling local artisans and entrepreneurs, leveraging his natural organizational skills, his extensive network, and his pragmatic problem-solving abilities to help them overcome the often daunting challenges of starting and sustaining a small business. He was still undeniably rough around the edges, a man of few words but profound actions, yet his clients trusted him implicitly. He became known for his unwavering integrity, his fair dealings, and his uncanny knack for untangling complex problems. He had found his true purpose, not lurking in the shadows of his past, but standing firmly in the light, actively helping others build their dreams. He continued to volunteer at a local youth center, sharing his own story with honesty and humility, offering a tangible beacon of hope to kids who were teetering on the edge of making poor choices, showing them through his own example that second chances were not just possible, but powerfully real, and that a past mistake did not have to dictate the entire narrative of their future. The bond between Lily and Mark remained an unbreakable, foundational element of their lives. They were more than just siblings. They were partners in resilience, survivors of a shared storm, a living testament to the enduring, transformative power of family and unconditional love. Lily's wedding day, once a symbol of profound pain, public humiliation, and shattered trust, had, through a strange and wonderful alchemy, become the unlikely catalyst for incredible personal growth, unexpected joy, and the forging of an even deeper connection between them. It had taught them both a vital lesson. That true revenge isn't about the fleeting satisfaction of inflicting pain, but about the lasting fulfillment of transcending it. It's about choosing every day to build a life so richly imbued with love, purpose, success, and happiness that the malicious actions of those who sought to cause harm simply lose their power, fading into insignificance. It's about proving, through action and example, that kindness is an infinitely greater and more enduring force than cruelty, and that the most profound, life-altering victories are often the quietest ones, born from unwavering resilience, boundless compassion, and the steadfast, unwavering belief in a brighter, sweeter tomorrow. And in a world that often felt cynical and fractured, their story served as a quiet, potent reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds can indeed lead to the most beautiful and unexpected healing, and that even an ex-con brother, driven by love, can be an angel in disguise, orchestrating a revenge far sweeter and more satisfying than any cake.